Well, that is like, so that was what I was running into the last 6 months.
What is, hold on.
Kyle, remove yourself, bud.
Oops. Am I on this right now?
Yeah.
Sorry.
There we go. Sorry about that. Hello, guys. Welcome to day 2 of the BatchLeads Masterclass presented by me, RJ Bates III. I'm excited to see we've already got quite a few people in here this morning, so you guys are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to take a couple minutes to kind of tell you something that I just kind of experienced. I just kind of, I don't know, got to talk about it just to deal with some of the emotions that I'm going through right now. I've got probably the biggest deal in my career closing this week. We're buying a country club, Woodhaven Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. I was a member of this country club as a kid, and Elijah De La Garza, my best friend and business partner, he lived on the country club. He lived on hole number 8, and we actually own that house now, his childhood home. It was his parents' house. We bought it sub 2 from him, and he lives there now with his kids and his fiance. And we just found out this morning that the seller passed away yesterday. He was a pretty incredible human being. This whole deal would not be taking place if it wasn't for him, his business acumen and integrity in the way that he's carried himself. He was seller financing the country club to us, as well as 16 and a half acres that we're going to do development on. And he was in his 80s, and he lived an incredible life. But we really got to know him over the past couple months, and I was so looking forward to showing him how we were going to revitalize the country club. And the reason why I share this with is, I just found out literally as I was going live, but also because there is an extreme human element to what we do as real estate investors, and you have to prepare yourself for the emotions that are involved in some of these deals, and you never know what's going to be thrown your way. This is the first time I've ever had a seller that I was this close with pass away right prior to closing, and it's difficult to kind of comprehend. Talking to somebody for 60 days straight and then have them pass away right here. But it also gives us even more motivation for revitalizing this club that he was a part of, this part of East Fort Worth that meant so much to him, and the amount of people that he's put us in contact with the city council, and everything that we want to do to get this project going. So just kind of wanted to share that, guys, with you. Share that with you guys this morning, just to kind of let you know, hey, prepare yourself for these moments. It's inevitable with the amount of volume that we do that there's going to be circumstances like this. It's unfortunate, and my prayers and condolences go out to Lou's family. He was a great human being, a great ambassador for the city of Fort Worth, and everything that he did for so many people. So appreciate everybody for the kind words that you shared there in the chat. But that being said, I have an obligation to you guys to come in here. You guys have earmarked your time to come in here and learn how to use this amazing program, BatchLeads. And so I'm going to give it all I've got. I do want to make a little edit on what we're going to do today. We're not going to do the Twilio integration this morning. We're just going to go straight in list pulling. I'm going to do the Twilio integration tomorrow morning because really we don't need that until we're set up right before we start sending out text messages. which we'll do that on Friday. So slight edit. We're just going to go straight into the list pulling. So I hope you guys are okay with that. But I'm excited for you guys. If you attended yesterday, or even if you didn't, I sent out an email of day one recording, as well as the Google Doc of the text templates and the quick replies. If you did not get that, check your spam. The subject title is BatchLeads Masterclass Day Number 1. Just make sure, let me know that everybody received that. We'll be sending out the daily recordings, as well as any other gives that we have for you guys. So just want to make sure we're on point there. That being said, does anybody have any questions going back to day one? Is everybody clear on where we are right now in the setup? What we've done is we've set up in our new account the initial text templates. There's 25 initial text templates, another 9 spinner messages that we did, which just changes a couple of the words, as well as 1 backup message. And then we had the 5 quick replies. Okay. And then go back and watch that day one recording to understand how and why we use those quick replies. We'll also be going over that on Friday once we actually start texting sellers to make sure you fully understand the process there. Tim, make sure to check your spam there. If not, I will, I'll make sure that you get that. Okay. Let's see here. Couldn't get the SMS button in the account I opened through the link provided in your email. You couldn't get the Google Doc. I'll make sure that, everybody gets something. If not, here's the thing that you can always do. I'm going to drop this in the chat. Here's my personal email. If you did not get something, just go ahead and shoot me an email. Tell me exactly what you need. rj@titaniumprops.com. Just shoot me a message, and I will make sure to get you what you need. I want to make sure everybody is getting everything they need to succeed moving forward. Okay. One last question before we get started. Bob says, since you get so many leads from texting, are you getting less leads now that you can't text as much? No, we're actually getting more. And I know this is a batch program, but would you consider using another service that allows you to text more leads a day? No, I wouldn't. I've used all of the other systems previously. I've used Sherpa. I've used Launch Control, REI Reply, Smarter Contact. I've used all of those. And the reason why I promote batch is because this is the one that allowed me to get to the volume that we're at. So no, I would not use another text program. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here promoting batch or anything like that. That's the reason why I promote batch. Okay. All right. So that being said, let's go ahead and let's get started on the list pulling. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So as you guys can see, this account, it's got no data in it whatsoever. On the far left here, these are, your menu choices. What we're going to be playing around in today is list search. Okay. So the location that we have decided that we are going to pull in is Fort Wayne, Indiana. Okay. We always start our list search through the city. Okay. We don't go county. We don't go zip codes. We just go purely based off of the cities. We go ahead and we search that specific city. We pull up the quick filters. The first number that I'm looking for here on the quick filters is how many vacant properties are there in that specific city. Okay. And that's really just to verify that there's enough volume in that market for us to actually be running a campaign in. Okay. And in this case, we've got 3,589 vacant properties. That's plenty. Really, we want to keep it somewhere higher than 1,000. So this is plenty enough. Someone asked, can your screen be larger? Let me play around the settings real quick and see if I can make it larger. I don't know if I can. Let me see if this does anything. Does that help you guys? I think that just made it full screen on my screen. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, Bob says there is a full screen button that we can click on in AirMeet. Okay, so you guys can make it larger on your side. Okay, so yeah, if you guys could do that, just hit the full screen in the upper right corner. Okay, so you guys should be good. All right, so let me get back to this. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to click the filters. Okay, so in the filters, we're going to choose residential under classifications. And then the property types, we're going to do single family, townhouse. If you're in a market like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Rhode Island, places that row houses are very common, it's important that you include this. Majority of the United States, that's not going to be the case. You don't have to include row houses. Okay. And then we're going to go down to duplex, triplex, and quadplex. Okay. So under property characteristics, this is going to be the only criteria that we enter: residential, single family, townhouse, duplex, triplex, quadplex. Okay. MLS status, no, we don't want anything that's listed on the MLS. We're going to skip pre-foreclosure and auctions. We're going to go to ownership info. We're going to do individually owned. And then we're going to go to valuation and equity. Equity, we're going to do 50 to 100. And then on the estimated value, this is the part that I think majority of the people struggle with, because our ideal goal here is to hit the median value of the specific city that we're marketing in. This is how we eliminate the lower end properties that we don't want to get, that are going to be extremely difficult for us to dispo. And this is also how we avoid the super high end properties that would have a very limited buyer's pool. Okay. So in this case, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I'm going to do 65,000 as my bottom. And then on the top, I'm going to do 200,000, and I'm going to see how many records that gives us. Okay. Now, one, to give you the criteria right here in the blue, this is what you need to remember. Okay. City, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Classification, residential. Property types, single family, townhouse, duplex, triplex, quadplex. Not on the MLS. Individually owned. Estimated value 65,000, 200,000. And then the estimated equity 50 to 100%. Okay. Now, the only part of that you would toggle would be the property types. If you don't want to be going after duplex, triplexes, and quadplexes, you can remove those and just go after single family. Or the estimated value, that number is always going to change. For example, if I were pulling a list in Portland, Oregon, I obviously wouldn't want to do 65,000 to 200,000, because the property values are much higher in Portland, Oregon. So in that case, I would probably do 150,000 to 500,000 to try to maximize the amount of data that I can get. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply these filters. 3,589 vacant properties went all the way down to 1,052. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to add to my list is the 1,052 vacant properties. I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to add. I'm going to create a new list. Now, the list name is going to be very important. Okay. This is how we're going to name all of our lists moving forward. City, comma, state, type out the entire state, hyphen, acquisitions, hyphen, absentee, hyphen, today's date. Okay. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are we calling this list absentee if right now we're adding vacant properties? The master list on our data is always going to be called absentee because it's the one filter that we can add on later on in the properties tab after we've pulled our list. So it's always the last filter that we can add on top. Okay. How we know this is a vacant property is through the tagging system. Okay. So we're going to tag this as vacant. This is extremely important because later on, when you're sending out text messages, when sellers call you and say, why are you reaching out to me? You can then look up that property. You can look at your tags and you can say, according to my data, your property is vacant and it's in pre-foreclosure and you're behind on taxes. And so I thought you might be interested in selling your property due to these reasons. Okay. The other thing that's extremely important is we want to minimize how many text messages we're sending out daily. And so the tags, they let us know how many motivating factors each seller has. And based off of that, we can get super hyper focused on our data and choose who we're text messaging on a daily basis based off the amount of tags that they have. Okay. So right here, I'm adding the 1,052 vacant properties. I'm creating a new list, Fort Wayne, Indiana. So city, state, acquisitions. If you were doing this for dispositions, this is where you would type in dispositions, and then absentee, and then the date that you're pulling that list. Now we're going to save that. Okay. Now it's going to take a couple of minutes for 1,000 records to go through. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second here and open it up to questions for you guys in regards to where we are right now in the list pulling aspect of this. Okay. So Alan asks, I know it's a rather basic point, but can you elaborate on the difference between vacant and absentee? Absolutely. So vacant's pretty obvious, right? The system is just claiming that that's a vacant property. There's no one currently living in it. Absentee means the owner is not living in that address. There's a different mailing address associated with the owner than this property. So an absentee owner could just be a landlord, and there could totally be a tenant living in it. So it's not a vacant property. That would be a generic answer to that question. Okay. Brandon asks, what resource do you normally use to determine the median home price? Google search. So Brandon, I used to get like super wrapped up into that. I would go on to Zillow and I would look to see like just how much are the average price points of houses that are currently listed for sale. But at this point, due to the amount of volume that we've just done across the United States, I have a pretty good idea of where we want to be, specifically in like the Midwest and the Sun Belt states, which is where we do the majority of our volume. So when we go into those types of markets, we know we want to be somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 range, right? That's like the ideal sweet spot where, your buyer could either be a flipper or a landlord. And so that's where we want to just be able to maximize our buyer's pool. Don't overthink the estimated value. Okay. You can just play around with it and change it just to see how much data you're getting down at the bottom. And ideally, you're just putting yourself in a position where you're going to be getting solid data in those price points that you need to be in. 100, 200,000. That's where you're going to be at, I would say 95% of the time. Okay. So if the median home average is 250,000, do you go 100 to 400? I'd probably do 150 to 350 on that. I might go down to 100,000 just if there's an area in the city that there's a landlord zip code that's going to be, we don't want to miss out on that. What we want to miss out is the war zone of the city that no one wants to buy in. And listen, at the end of the day, there's always an investor that still buys there. Okay. It's just that it's going to be limited. And so everything that we do is always about maximizing our efficiency with our data. Okay. Let's see here. Tiffany asks, are you going to talk about how to give a lead multiple tags? Yes. Right now I'm just waiting on the vacant data to come in. It'll probably take just a couple minutes. We're going to continue to pull more records and add to the list. And every time we do it, we tag it for whatever it is. And so that's how you tag it multiple times. Juan says, when it asks value, and let's say the median in that area was 350K, what would you use for the price range? 200 to 500,000, somewhere in that range. Again, don't overthink it. Okay. We want it. We don't want to eliminate the huge buyers pool for the landlords by going too high with it. And we also don't want to go too high where, flippers don't want properties that have high days on market. So again, we kind of always want to err on the going lower price range than we do want to go on the higher price range. That makes sense. Mark says, can you please go over what you said about why you label the list absentee again? Yes. And I'm going to show this to you, but the main reason why is after you pull your list. So right now we're going to pull vacant properties, tax defaults, liens, pre-foreclosure, inherited. We're going to pull all of that into one list. After that list is pulled, it goes to the properties tab. That's where your list now resides. After you pull that list, you can always add the absentee filter on top of that list. And so it's always that master filter that you can add on to any list that you ever pull. That's why I always call the mixed list that includes vacants and tax defaults and liens and all of that absentee, because I can always niche it down one step further with absentee. Lists that we've pulled from somewhere else, can we give them multiple tags? Absolutely, Tiffany. That'll probably be covered tomorrow. Once we're in the properties tab, I will show you how to do that. That's a great question, and it's absolutely necessary for you to do that. And you should do that, right? If you're new to Batch and you already have a ton of data somewhere else, I'm going to show you what to do with that here in the next couple of days, okay? All right, let's go back and see if we can pull some more data here. All right, let's go to tax default would be the next one. We select all, it's only one property. We select our list. So we're selecting an existing list now. We're adding it to that list. Fort Wayne, Indiana acquisitions absentee. And then we have to create a new tag. We always call the tags whatever the quick filter is at the bottom. So the exact same way it's written down there, tax defaults, that's the tag that we're creating, okay? The next one we're going to select will be liens. We select all of those. Select our existing list and create the tag for liens. Okay, so that 1,300 records will take a minute to come through. Okay, someone asks, what's the purpose of the label acquisition? Okay, well, you very well might need to run a campaign for dispositions. And so it's, for us, we use this system for both texting cash buyers and for texting motivated sellers. So we need to know, what was that campaign? What was that list pulled for? So for example, this list, if I were pulling it for cash buyers, which in our data right here, we have 6,973 cash buyers in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So in that circumstance, what we would call that list would be Fort Wayne, Indiana, dispositions hyphen cash buyers hyphen today's date. And so that's the reason why we include that in our list name. Brandon says, my batch account allows 10,000 records. If you're pulling multiple lists and there are leads that you've already pulled and are in your database, do these leads still count against your allotted 10,000 amount? Yes, because it will be in multiple lists, okay? Now, the other thing I would say, Brandon, is are you talking about you're allowed to pull 10,000 records per month? Or are you talking about the amount of records that you're allowed to store inside of your batch account? And the other aspect of that is I would go ahead and say if you're worried about the amount of properties that you're going to be pulling, then that means you need to go ahead and upgrade your account. For me personally, we have the highest settings that you can possibly have for a batch account, because I don't ever want to be limited by the amount of data that I'm able to pull. Data is the foundation for what Titanium Investments is. It's acquisitions is the heart, but the data is the foundation. We have to be able to have this, okay? And so in order for our heart to be able to keep going, acquisitions, we've got to be able to fuel it as much as we possibly can. And I never want to be limited when it comes to our data. Okay. All right. Let's see if any other questions while we're waiting on this. All right. Let's go back to share my screen. So far we pulled the vacant, we pulled tax defaults, and we pulled the liens. Let's go to the 17 pre-foreclosures. Looks like it's still uploading those 1,300 records. So right down here, this will let you know, hey, you can't go ahead and upload your 17 pre-foreclosures because it's waiting. You still got the 1,300 liens going in. Does anybody have any questions about this process so far? Phil says, what did you save the filter search for? The filters right here. This blue box. So you've got the city. The classification is residential. The property type, single family, townhouse, duplex, triplex, quadplex. Not on the MLS. Individually owned. 65,000 to 200,000 on an estimated value. And then the estimated equity, 50 to 100%. Monica asks, if you have already pulled the list and then 6 months later you refresh it, will it duplicate records you already have? It's not necessarily duplicating it. It's putting it on another list. Okay. So for example, if I pull a list in January, that property, 123 Main Street, is going to exist in that list. If I then pull a list in July, it's going to exist in that list as well. Okay. And that's important because the way that we're going to teach you the marketing flow, you want it to reside in multiple lists because there could be multiple reasons why it exists in multiple lists. For example, say the property is an absentee property in July, and that's why you pulled it. You pulled absentee owners in January. Okay. Now come in July, say it's in pre-foreclosure. If you pull that and you tag it as pre-foreclosure, it will now have both of those tags, but it will exist in two different lists for two different reasons. One, because you said it was an absentee owner, and another one because now it's in pre-foreclosure. And a lot will change with these properties over the course of time. So you want it to be updated, and that's another sign of multiple motivations for that property. That's why the tagging is so important, because it will show you why you're putting it in that list. Okay. The name for the filters is always whatever the quick filter is down at the bottom. So vacant, tax defaults, liens, pre-foreclosures, whatever it is down at the bottom, that's what you're going to tag it. I hope I'm answering that question. Okay. Let's go back here. We should be good to go now. All right. So now we're adding the 17 pre-foreclosures. The next thing that we're going to add is the 3 inherited. Give it just a couple seconds. Phil asks, I'm in a smaller market. Can I just do this by county and not by city? Yeah, if you're in an extremely small market, you can do it by county. I prefer to do it by city. Because then I know exactly where I'm at, and I know I'm not going to get in the extremely rural areas of a county. But also, Phil, I'm nationwide and virtual. So from my perspective, I'm always wanting to hit where I know that there's the population. So I'm hitting that larger city, and I don't want to go in those the outskirts per se. Okay, so now we're going to add the 3 inherited. Okay, so we have the vacant, the tax defaults, the liens, the pre-foreclosures, the inherited. The next thing we want to add is the expired listing. Okay, so in this circumstance, the only other thing that I would normally add would be any tired landlords, which we don't have any on this data, or unknown equity. We don't have any of those. Those would be the only other things that I would add. So in this circumstance, the flow of your list pulling is vacant, tax defaults, liens, pre-foreclosure, inherited, expired listing. Okay, so that is the list that we have now pulled. Does anybody have any questions in regard to that process? See, Tiffany says for the list pulling, could you pull a list of churches, for example, or is it mainly residential? Well, we could go in there. Let's play around with that for a second. You can pull a lot of different things. I've never actually tried to go after churches, but let's look. We can go back to the filters, property characteristics. I'm assuming that's going to be commercial. Let's see if we have church here. I mean, there's a lot. There's a funeral home. I don't see church. But is that something that you would actually want to be going after? Or is that just an example? I mean, obviously you see there's a lot of choices here. But for the sake of the masses, I'm strictly showing how to go after the residential.
Are you still there?
Do you have a one sheeter on how to pull leads? No, Christopher, it's just what I'm showing you now, and you'll get the replay of this video that you can kind of watch it step by step through the process. Honestly, after you do it a couple of times, it's rinse and repeat the same thing over and over and over again. So you'll kind of just build the habit on how to pull the list, and it gets really repetitive real quick. I mean, I know if this is the first time you've ever watched me pull a list, it's kind of like, wow, there's a lot going on here. But honestly, it's really not, because we pull the list the exact same way every time. The only thing that changes is that estimated value. Let's see. Vacant, tax defaults, liens, absentee. What did I miss? I'm not sure what your question is. What we're doing is we're making a master list for Fort Wayne, Indiana. So it's vacant properties, tax defaults, liens, pre-foreclosures, inherited, and expired listings. That's how we made this list. Okay. All right. Let's see. Brian Woods, does your team save your filters so you don't have to keep rerunning the same filters? And how would you name them? Can you show those that might not know about this how to do it? No, I don't do that. I'm showing you exactly what I do. I don't save the filters because I don't want to become so robotic that as Batch is updating their system, that we are not seeing new updates. If the last time I created a video about how to pull a list using Batch Leads, there was probably 10 or 12 different features that aren't in there. And so if I'm not in the habit of consistently pulling it, I mean, it takes literally less than 30 seconds for me to add the filters. And this is where I am so anti-automation and trying to eliminate the human aspect of running a business. I'm a huge advocate for No, we're going to be the ones that click the buttons. We're going to be the ones that are paying attention. I can tell you every day when Batch changes something immediately because we're in there and we're using the system. So that's why I don't do that. Okay. Can you do all this on BatchDriven, or do you specifically need to be on here and have a subscription at BatchLeads too? Yeah, no, you can't do all this in BatchDriven. BatchDriven is a lot more for, the driving for dollars. You're locating a property that has, a specific feature that, you might think they're motivated to sell, and then you're just reaching out to that one-off scenario. BatchLeads is a whole different animal, and this is for a lot, someone that wants to do higher volume and be a lot more efficient with their marketing. Another thing is BatchDriven is more expensive when it comes to the data and the texting and everything else. Let's see. Bob says, if you create a list and it has an existing lead from a previous list, is there a button you have to check to make sure it gets selected, or will it add another? No, you add the tag and it automatically adds the tag. If you just follow what I just showed you, I promise you, it's going to work just fine. You don't have to worry about, there's no additional buttons needed or worrying about it being on a different list or anything along those lines. Will you be showing us how to pull a cash buyers list? Well, I can show you right now. So right here, we already have this filter entered. You could literally just select cash buyers and then add it to a dispositions list. The only filter that you would need to possibly change there would be maybe the valuation. So if you wanted to really dive in and say, hey, I want all of the cash buyers, 25,000, that's about as low as you could possibly go, and say, I want to go up to 350,000, you could apply that filter. What did I do? Oh, I have commercial as because I was messing around with this. Residential. So there's our 11,633 cash buyers. So if you really want to do that, that would be the way that you could do your cash buyers list. Okay. So now that we have our list pulled, what I want to show you is where does that list go and what does it look like now that we've pulled it? Okay. So let me go back here. We're going to go to the properties tab. The properties tab is right up underneath list search. And this is where all of your data will exist once you've pulled it. Okay. So as we can see down here at the bottom, we've got our 1,300 liens that we pulled. The cool thing is now that we've pulled this, we've got 113 bankruptcies. Okay. Tiffany, you asked a question earlier about if I upload some data, which I'll go over this tomorrow, but how can I add a tag? Okay. So bankruptcy is not a choice for us when we're pulling our list, but the system automatically tells us, hey, there's 113 bankruptcies in this data, right? So I can click on the 113 bankruptcies. I can select all of those. Okay, so I selected all 113. I go to actions, I go to tags, and I add a tag. Now I create one for bankruptcy. This is what you would do with your pre-existing data when you upload it into BatchLeads. This is how you would add your tags. Okay. Same thing with auction. We have 10 properties that are currently in auction. So we want to select all of those and add the tag auction. What does bankruptcy and auction tell us? I mean, that tells us those people are highly motivated to sell. They're probably in the worst situation and need to sell more than anyone else on this list. And I will tell you, our highest performing list right now, whether it's cold calling or texting, where we're getting the majority of our deals in order, okay, is liens number 1, bankruptcy number 2, and auction number 3. Okay, so that's extremely important for you to know. All right, going back to the reason why we call this list absentee. Okay, so here we are. We've got 2,367 properties. That's what the size of the list that we just pulled for Fort Wayne, Indiana. In this circumstance, I'm not going to pull any more or any less data for Fort Wayne, Indiana. The ideal sweet spot in a market for our campaigns is 2,000 to 3,000 records. Really, I like to get up to 3,500. That would be like, hey, we've got a little bit of bonus data in there. But 2,000 to 3,000 is pretty common. That's like the perfect list size for us. So this was a perfect size list, maybe a little bit on the smaller side, but I think it's still really good for us. Okay. So we've got the 2,367 properties here. Okay. Let's see. What I want to make sure you guys, we understand all of the tagging system here. Okay. So we added all of the tags. What I want to do now is come to our filter. And this is where, if you wanted to, you could add the absentee filter. Okay. You can select yes to absentee, no to absentee. Okay. So if you just did not want to market to absentee owners, you could select that. You can also select in-state or out of state. Okay. I'm going to select yes to absentee. Okay. Now keep in mind, our list was 2,367. We apply that filter. Our list went down to 874. So the reason why we have this is if we wanted to get super niche down and hyper focus on our list, what we could have now is we know the data that we pulled was either vacant, tax default, liens, pre-foreclosure, inherited, or expired listings. Now, on these 874, we also added the absentee filter on top of it. That is why we call this absentee, our master list absentee, because that's really the only filter that we can add on top after we've pulled the list. And so we wanted to niche it down and say, hey, I'm tight on my budget. I don't want to spend $237 on skip tracing. I want to spend $87 on skip tracing. This is why we would add that filter. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? Okay, another thing that we can do on this tab right here is we could say, I want only properties with 2 or more tags. So right here, I moved the tag count to 2 to 8. Okay. I'm going to apply that filter and see. That niched our list down to 362. So that means out of the 2,300 plus records that we pulled, only 362 have 2 or more tags. And again, remember those tags were the actual motivating factors: vacant, tax default, liens, pre-foreclosure, inherited, and expired listings. Okay. We'll take this one for example. This first one, we could click on this address, come here to list/tags, and it says this property is vacant and liens. So to me, this is a great property for us to be marketing to, because we know that there is an underlying motivation here. They are experiencing some sort of financial distress. We could go here and look at what the actual lien is for. It was a sewer lien, probably not for much, $146, but the property is also vacant. So this could easily be a situation where maybe they moved out of town. Maybe they are an absentee owner and the property became vacant. The tenant moved out, and that's why there's a sewer lien, because the tenant didn't finish off and pay their last water bill. Something along those lines. Brandon says that property shows it sold in February. Yeah, but that still doesn't matter. No, I mean, they still might be motivated to sell the property. And again, I'm not going to worry about that. These are the types of things that some people get wrapped up in and worrying about. Some people have asked about the length of ownership. Should I be using that as a filter? Never once in my wildest dreams have I thought to do that. And here's the reason why. We buy houses from flippers that buy properties and get in over their heads. We buy properties from landlords that maybe 6 months ago they bought the property and they thought they wanted to be a landlord and they have the worst tenant in the world, or they don't have the money to do the capex that's needed on the property, but they thought they were ready to be a landlord. That's why the filter that I use, individually owned, is kind of identifying that these are going to be people that could potentially be trying to become something like a landlord or like a rehabber, but they don't necessarily have the skill set yet to do it. And that's just clear and evident from the aspect of they're buying a property in their own name. That's one of the reasons why that's one of the very few filters that I use there. Bob says, okay, so you don't add absentee owners from the quick filter when you're creating lists. You wait until you're done and then add absentee on top of the list when you're done with other quick filters. Correct. But I'm only going to add that absentee filter on the properties tab if the list is too large. Okay. Again, remember, the ideal size list for our campaigns is going to be in that 2,000 to 3,000 range. Okay. That's where I really want to be. Why? Well, going all the way back to 2020, when I did the 50-50-50, the average initial text that it took to get a contract was 2,500. So if your list was 2,500 records, then that means on average you're gonna get a deal. And what was my challenge? My challenge was to get a deal in each state. So that's kind of how that came about. But it's also just due to the way that we're kind of filtering it out. That's where the majority of your lists are just going to land. Very rarely are you going to be in a city that's so large, like a Phoenix, a Dallas, a Houston, a Miami or a Tampa, something along those lines, where you can get up to like the 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 range. And then at that point in time, you can niche it down with the estimated value. You can just tighten that up. So say if your estimated value was 100 to 300,000 and you got 10,000 records, well, let's niche that down to 150 to 225. And maybe that gets us to closer to 3,500 records. And we're just in a more concise area. And the other thing that helps you with is also when you're comping properties, right? If you know that the estimated value of the property was 150 to 200,000, then you know almost all of your ARVs should be between 150 to 200,000. So it really helps you with the deal analysis aspect of it as well. All right. Let's see. Ed asked, does this bring in all the skip trace results into the app so you don't go to Excel where it's a 6-foot wide mess? Yeah, all of your skip trace results are going to be right here. I mean, can you export them out into an Excel? Absolutely, but they're all going to be inside of your BatchLeads account. All right, let's go back here, show a couple final things before we wrap up for today. On this property tab, this is where I think owners of companies should be spending the majority of their time, is on this tab right here, understanding what their campaigns are and why we're marketing to them. Okay. Now, in this circumstance, this is the first list that we've pulled. Now, imagine in 3 months from now, we're going to go back to Fort Wayne, Indiana. We're going to pull a second list in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then we're going to market to this list and that list. And then in 3 months, so, what is that? 180 days from now, 6 months from now, we're going to do the same thing again. And we're building our data pool on top of each other. And that's where the tag counts get important. That's why this list count right here is extremely important. Okay. Because it's showing us, hey, this property's in multiple lists with multiple tags. That is a sign of motivation. This is where when you come in here to the filters and you're deciding, okay, I want this list, I want this many tags, and I want to add absentee on top of it, you're really niching down who you're marketing to. And that's why it's extremely important today, because, you know, we're wanting to send less than 500 texts per day per account, then we're really wanting to make sure each one of those text messages is going to someone that's highly motivated. Because each one of those texts is an opportunity for someone in the United States that needs to sell their house today. And it's just our job to turn the lights on and making sure we're letting them know that we're their solution. Okay. Brian asks, for the recently solds, would you change the status of these properties to something like opt out so as to not add them to a texting campaign? No. And here's the reason why, Brian. If you look at the avatar of our seller based off of our data, what we're really looking for is majority of landlords that are not highly sophisticated. Okay. And so just because we're texting them about, 6715 Waycross Drive doesn't mean that there's another property that they want to sell. Maybe it's not even in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Maybe they own a property in South Bend, Indiana, or Fayetteville, Indiana. And we weren't even messaging them about that. So I never want to make the choice for a seller to remove them from my list. Okay. I know this is kind of me talking out both sides of my mouth, because I was just talking about, hey, we want to save all of our text messages to be able to send to someone that needs to sell today. And that's our job, right? But as far as eliminating data, there's a reason why they're in our database. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to cold call them. We want to make sure that we continue to text message them. You would be amazed at how many of our deals are coming from data that was pulled in 2019 and 2020, and now that they want to sell. Whereas back then they told us no, or it was recently sold, but now they have another property they need to sell. And so for us, the data is king, and you can always eventually refresh that data and have it re-skip trace if you absolutely need to kind of clean it up. But for the most part, I just keep it where it is. So Tiffany asks, so for every 3 months, you pull the exact same list. So yes and no. Let me give you a couple of examples. Portland, Oregon is a good market for us, but it's highly competitive. It's saturated. The price points are high. We're probably going to pull a list in that market once every 6 months. Okay. Boise, Idaho, extremely tough market. Okay. Not one of our better markets. Still want to do marketing there, because what's happening today in Boise, Idaho is probably not going to be what's happening in Boise, Idaho in 2027. But data accumulation is important. Data is cheap, 10 cents. Okay. So for me to go pull a list in Boise, Idaho of 2,000 records cost me $200. Okay. So let's go ahead and pull that list. We'll do that probably once a year to test it out. See what the temperature is in the market. Is it still extremely difficult? Is every seller in Boise, Idaho still complaining about California moving to Idaho and taking over their state? Because that's what it was in 2020, and that's what it was in 2021. We haven't run a campaign yet in 2022, but we will, and then we'll get a temperature gauge on that. Now, perfect example of this is I talked to you guys about the campaign in Nebraska. Okay, we ran a campaign in Nebraska. We spent about $270 in skip trace. We added our old data in there, and we're probably going to net over 6 figures on that campaign. Okay. Now, if you go back to the campaign that I ran in Nebraska in 2020, that reaction in that market, the results of skip tracing there were not positive. It was a difficult market at that time. We got a couple deals out of it, but it was hard work. It was not like it is in 2022. So the market has changed there for us. So now what I'll do is, instead of pulling Nebraska once every 6 months, now I'm going to put it on the, hey, let's put it on the once every 2 months or 3 months list. And maybe a market that was super good for us in 2020. What's a good example of a market like that? Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay. So Cedar Rapids, Iowa got hit with a derecho in 2020. And there was a lot of highly motivated sellers there because their houses were ravaged with damage. And so they were just like, listen, this is a rental property. I just need to get rid of it. I'm willing to sell it for this. I've already got my insurance proceeds. Just take it. Okay. Well, that's kind of slowed down now. And so Cedar Rapids is not as good of a market for us as it was then. And so now instead of pulling that every 3 months, maybe we've shifted that to every 6 months. And so that's kind of where, that's what I'm saying. For me as a business owner, these are the type of decisions that I'm making to make sure that I'm putting my team that's doing all the marketing, tracking their KPIs, tracking the results, and then kind of keeping my thumb on the pulse and making sure we're making the appropriate decisions on where we're marketing. Okay. Let's see. Brandon asks, let's say you added a property, tagged it, and several months later that property sells with that new owner. There are no distress signs, but the lead in there will still show those motivating tags for the previous owner. What do you do? Yeah, that's going to happen. And we're going to continue to market to that person over and over and over again. Might be unfortunate for them, but again, I'm not going to worry about that. We still do marketing to people we've literally bought their houses. Okay, so this is why this system is powerful from the aspect of we're adding properties on top of it, and then we're using that tagging system. And then as the tags continue to grow, we can eliminate those because those tags aren't going to continue to grow. That property is not going to become suddenly pre-foreclosure or tax default or lien because that person's not in pre-foreclosure or tax default or getting a lien. So that's how we kind of eliminate that. And again, you could get lost in the, well, how do I manage removing people from my data? For me, I'm all about how do I get more data? I don't worry about the removing of it. I want to just accumulate more. Okay. Bob says a property has a vacant tag on May 1st. If you pull the city list again on August 1st, it still shows up as vacant. Will Batch give 2 tags for vacant or just one? You can't ever tag it for the same thing. Ed asked, do you do any mail or postcards? Yes. And you're going to learn how we do that here in a couple of days, as long as you're here, probably on Thursday. How do you set your background to black and BatchLeads? Mine's white by default and hard to see. I love it. Let me show you. Bottom left corner. Day, night. Now, if that wasn't worth the cost of admission, I don't know what was. That's what you learn right there at the BatchLeads Masterclass, how to turn it black or white. And I agree, the white is awful. I hate it so much. I actually got to turn it back to night. Oh, man. All right. So do you guys have any other questions about the list pulling? I want to make sure that we're on the same page here on how we're going to pull these lists, because this is, like I said, this is the foundation for your business, and it needs to become a rinse and repeat cycle. Okay. And don't underestimate some of the things I'm talking about. The naming of the tags. Okay. I know people that go out and they tag things, the date that they pulled it, or, the city, and all these stupid things. The tags need to tell you that they're motivated to sell the property. Okay. That's what the tags are there for. Tags tell you it's vacant, it's absentee, it's pre-foreclosure, it's inherited, it's bankruptcy, it's auction. It needs to tell you all of those things. Okay. That's the power in the tagging system. All right. And then the naming of the list and the campaigns and all of that, extremely important. Go back and watch my day 1 of the 50-50-50 challenge. Okay. You know what I named that campaign? Cleveland, Ohio. You know what I tagged that data? Cleveland. Now, what in God's name did that teach me? Nothing. 6 months from then, I got a list named Cleveland, Ohio. I have no idea what I pulled. Is that pre-foreclosure? Is that tax default? Was it all absentee? I don't know. Well, let me go look at the tags. Oh, Cleveland. Well, I knew it was in Cleveland because the freaking address is Cleveland and the the list is called Cleveland. So there has to be some thought process behind all of this. And I've failed over and over. And this is what has finally succeeded. So please, you're here. You're taking your time to learn. Listen to what I'm telling you, because I've done this over and over and over again, and this works. So I want you to understand there's a reason why we do it the way that we do it. And I'm a stickler about the details when it comes to this. Don't type out the abbreviation of the state. Okay? Don't. Type out Missouri. Type out Montana. Because if you think you're that good at the abbreviations and your whole company moving forward is going to be that great, just have everyone in your company try to name the abbreviations of the states that start with M. Okay? Montana, Michigan, Massachusetts, Mississippi. They're going to mess them up. Missouri, MO. Go ahead and figure that one out. Okay? That's why we type it all the way out, and we call it acquisitions or dispositions. Even if today you're saying, I'll never use batch leads for dispositions. Okay, still type out acquisitions, because you don't know what you're going to be doing 3 years from now and how you're using this tool. So go ahead and start building out that habit of typing out acquisitions. Name your list appropriately. Put those dates in there and build out a system. This is called having standards for your business. This is how you eventually replace yourself. Even if you're a solopreneur right now, if you do everything this way, now you have a system in the way that you pull your list, the way that we tag our list, the way that we do everything in this regard. You can actually have an SOP for yourself. So eventually you could say, hi, I want to hire you. I'm going to pay you X amount so you could do this the same way that I've been doing it for the past 6 months. And now you replace yourself out of that job. Okay. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is start having standards for yourself doing this within these types of systems. Now, this is called building out the process for that system. Two separate things, systems and processes. We love to say that together, but this is actually building out a process. Okay. All right. Mark Rice asked me, what more does the Crucible include? This is a lot of value. Okay. So to give you an example, Mark, what I am essentially giving you right now in these 5 days is probably about an hour of the Crucible. Okay. Crucible is 2 days. We show you everything that we do here. I hold nothing back. I show you everything that we do. Then after that, you have a debrief call with me one-on-one, and I say, okay, I showed you what we do. Let's talk about your goals. Let's talk about your manpower. Let's talk about your budget. Let's put together a plan for your business specifically. And then we have weekly Monday calls where you can come in. You can ask me anything you want to ask. Yesterday, from 5 to 6:30, I went over seller financing, creative financing, specific examples, people bringing me deals that they needed help. And so I walked through those specific deals. I analyzed it. I came up with what their offers should be on it and why, and explained it to them. So that's what the Crucible brings. All right. Is the Crucible online or is it in person? It's in person only. We used to do virtual, and those people, they weren't getting the same vibe. They didn't get to go eat lunch and breakfast with me. They didn't get to go axe throwing. I didn't get to know them. I didn't get to see all the weird idiosyncrasies of their lives. You know, I want to get to know you. How can I help you and show you what to do for your business if I don't get to understand you, right? Can't do that through a computer screen. I see, Bob, I already know that you like to ask a lot of questions, right? That's great. I love those times. I hate it when people just sit in silence. Just so you know, if you're sitting in silence right now, it's like just driving me crazy. I'm literally here. I'm taking time out of my life to just answer anything that you could possibly ask me. I think I've answered every question in here so far, and you're just sitting in silence. Maybe it's because you don't know what to ask. Then ask something stupid so I can yell at you. Okay. Let's see. Brandon says, with 150K in my database, I have some work to get things reorganized. Thanks for the clarity. You do. Don't do it yet, though. Do it tomorrow, okay? Because I'm going to show you a couple of little things in the properties tab before we do that on the organization. It's going to be real easy, Brandon, just to be honest with you. The renaming of the list, you can rename them. The tagging, you can redo that. And then we can kind of, from now on, do things the right way. And that's where your organization will get a lot clearer, okay? Ed asks, is the Crucible in Fort Worth, Texas, and is it more than once? Yes, it's at our office here. 9307 Boat Club Road, Fort Worth, Texas. I'm staring at Eagle Mountain Lake right now. We're right on the lake, and it's raining and cold here. I don't understand what's happening. It doesn't feel like May here in Texas. It's amazing though. The Crucibles next week, June 2nd and 3rd. Then we've got July 21st and 22nd, and then September 1st and 2nd. Those are the ones that we have scheduled. Okay. Alan wants to know, do we have urban axes in DFW like we do in Boston? We go to Stumpy's, is what it's called. I don't actually use these axes for the axe throwing though. They're too long. The shafts are too long, so I have to use the little hatchets that they got there. Tiffany says, if a property is vacant, then 3 months later no longer vacant, do you remove the tag? No, because I want to know that at some point in time it was vacant. I'm building a story, is the best way to put it. Eventually, I'm going to get on the phone with them and we're going to have a conversation. And if I see absentee, vacant, pre-foreclosure, tax default, inherited, like it's kind of building a bridge. Just showing me all the things that have happened along the lifespan of me knowing about that property. Do you use the lead status column? Not yet. Okay. That's new. It just got added, so I haven't used it yet. I want to see what the value of it is, and maybe it'll be a process that we use, but right now it's currently not a part of our processes. You mentioned to wait until tomorrow to start pulling lists. I have a call with Batch today and want to set up everything. Should I wait until tomorrow? No, go ahead and have your onboarding call. That's great. Tell them you're doing the BatchLeads Masterclass. So tell them, don't teach me the batch way. I'm already learning the RJ way. We don't want them to screw you up in the head, okay? I'm the investor. I know how to use this shit. They just know how to build cool programs, okay? So don't let them fuck you up in the head, all right? You can go ahead and start pulling lists. Pull it exactly the way I showed you today. Just what I was talking about there with him is reorganizing some of his old data. Let's not do that. But yeah, go ahead and start pulling your lists. All right. Roger, you want to join the Crucible, then you need to call Patrick and you need to get your ass here next week. Okay. Tim says, if you're in a big market, what would be the best list to start with? The one I just showed you. It's the same list over and over and over again. Okay. And listen, if you're in a big market like St. Louis, okay, actually, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just do it real quick. Let's do it, Tim. Let's search. St. Louis. Boom. Search. Filter. See, this is the thing. Why do we think that it's going to be different? Because your situation's different. You're in a bigger city? Who cares? It's the same thing. See, we just fly through it. It's the same stuff over and over. Okay. Estimated value. St. Louis, right? We got to avoid the shitholes. Okay. So let's do 100,000 to 250,000. Okay. Let's see what that gives us down here on data. Boom. Look at that. 593, 1634, 1433, 13,992. That's not big. This is a smaller list than we just pulled. Now, say, well, that's not enough. All right. 75,000. Change that estimated value. No. 935, 4,000. I probably wouldn't take all 4,000 of those. So what you can do here, instead of taking 4,000, you go to select and you can type in a custom number. Say, I only want to take 500 of those tax defaults. Boom. And then add it to your list. Okay. Again, don't overthink it. Okay. You can mind fuck yourself in this business. And it's literally the number one thing that kills people is they start overthinking it. They think their situation is different than somebody else's. Andrew said, why would you only take 500 of those? Well, because 4,000 tax defaults. I mean, that's $400 just on tax defaults. I want to verify that we're going to be able to actually get in front of the right people. And in some of those, in a place like that, some of that data could be old. It could be not updated from the county. It could be people that are, maybe St. Louis just isn't really big on, going after people that are behind on their taxes and they're just chilling, being a couple years late and they're on a payment program or whatever. To me, tax defaults is kind of the motivations. I really like liens, like that. Bankruptcy auction, obviously. Vacant, I'm a big fan of vacant. Pre-foreclosures, people are pretty condescending right now and arrogant about the whole, you can't take my house from me thing. So when you click on the property, does it give you the owner's phone number? Sorry, I don't know if I caught that part. That's only after you skip trace it. Okay, so we're going to go over that tomorrow, taking that list that we pulled, skip tracing it. That's when we get all of the owner's information, okay? Let's see here. Any other questions, guys? Are we good? I think we should be good. So tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central, we're going to get on it. I really appreciate the engagement here, guys. I appreciate you guys being understanding of the change that I made there with the Twilio situation. I just didn't want to get into that this morning. I want to make sure I'm fully prepared for that. And I set aside time this morning to make sure I was fully prepared. And then I got that call about our seller passing away. So appreciate you guys being understanding. I appreciate all the positive feedback about the masterclass so far. I'm not gonna lie, I love doing the crucible in front of people because I can see their faces and I can see their reaction. And sometimes when I drop a joke, I can see them laugh or not laugh, and I'm like, okay, I thought that was funny. It's a little bit harder when I'm just staring into a computer screen. So I appreciate that, the feedback that you guys have been giving me. That being said, I think there's something cool that I can show you. Let me see if I can figure this out while we're wrapping this up. I want to share. You guys asked a lot of questions about the Crucible. So let me go ahead and we'll wrap up today by sharing this video for the Crucible, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning and see how long this takes to play here. Thing that we have to succeed. Use the tools that we've given you. Utilize the knowledge that we've instilled in you over these past couple days.
Skip tracing, cold calling, and SMS, and how they create a process that's very simple but very, very, very effective. I feel like it's going to transition our business from here all the way up.
As an example, these two gentlemen are really doing something special with BatchDriven on an average getting how many deals a month? 5 deals a month from BatchDriven.
That's our first year in business, and we just did 560,000 gross revenue.
We're learning so much from RJ, Cassie, and Elijah. I'm an active duty military guy, so it's so cool to come here and just see the integrity and the purpose and things that RJ and these guys are driving into the students here.
We don't want you to just go out there and be successful. We want you to do what you're gonna do the right way, the most applicable way, be that Army. That's what it means to be a Titan.
You work with great people, they're gonna give you greatness in return, because now it's a friendship, and who do you always wanna work with? Your friends.
As a full-time house flipper, I wanted to do something a lot more virtual. I got introduced to RJ through my friend here, John, and didn't even know what I was coming to see, but after leaving, we've learned a ton we're going to implement into our business, and I think it's going to change the way we do business moving forward.
All right. Yes, all of the Crucibles are in Texas. They're all at our office for Texas. I want you to be able to come to my office, meet my team, see what we do here, see our setup, understand that it doesn't take a huge team. It doesn't take a huge operation to be able to do the 60 to 70 deals that we're doing a month. Honestly, it just takes building out these processes inside the systems. And then also not searching for unicorns. Okay. Don't go out and date that there's a better system out there. Dedicate yourself to one. I tell people all the time that, hey, if for me, the dedication that I have is to batch leads, to batch dialer, to speed the lead, to my CRM, and I don't have shiny object syndrome. I'm not looking for a unicorn. They don't exist. And that's why I want you guys to come to our office to witness that firsthand. So, where does the crucible come from? Are you a Marine? So our company is Titanium Investment. So a crucible is where you take a raw piece of ore and you heat it up, and all of the impurities, and it's called the slag, comes to the top, and you scrape it off, and then that's where you get the pure titanium or pure gold or pure silver. And so that's why we called it the Titanium Crucible. We want you to come here. We get rid of all your slag, and then you come out, your pure titanium, and you go kill shit. So that's how we came up with it. That was all my Bubba Elijah De La Garza's vision and idea as far as that name goes, and I absolutely love it. So appreciate all the feedback, guys, and we will see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. See you guys.